So, welcome now in my day 4 session. Thank you everyone for watching my previous session. All those who watched, well and good. So, in case if anyone is has joined for the first time in day 4 session, I'll strongly insist to go and watch all the videos of this complete DevOps course playlist, which is day 1, day 2, day 3. In day 1, day 2, and day 3, we have discussed about why DevOps, what DevOps is, virtual machines, SDLC process, which is very much essential to understand to start working on DevOps methodology. Now, in today's session, we'll basically talk about virtual machine part 2. In today's session, I'll basically show you how to create a virtual machines either on AWS cloud on Azure cloud, because doesn't matter which cloud platform you go to, more or less process remains same, like the way I was talking even yesterday, how to create one EC2 instances or how to create a virtual machine when we do have AWS cloud or Azure cloud respectively, because EC2 is known as a virtual machine in AWS cloud, and we do have a name of virtual machine as virtual machine in Azure cloud itself. So how to create that, how the process runs, and how the hypervisor is installed in each of the server helps to create a virtual machine when we place a request. I explained that about that yesterday. Now the condition is talk about any of the company. Previously, there was a scenario wherein almost all the companies were deploying their servers, deploying their own servers. It will be more better to say in their own data centers, and were creating infrastructure, creating resources in their own data centers. But things have changed a lot. Nowadays, the situation is that almost every company, especially the startups, they prefer to go into a cloud vendor, because in cloud they are getting everything on pay as you go model, as well as they are, it's more effective and more efficient, much more efficient. And whenever we talk about DevOps, or whenever we talk about today's world of IT industry, we talk about effectiveness, effective utilization of resources. And that's what I'm telling from day 1 of our session, how to effectively utilize our resources, which is one of the prime pillar of DevOps. Now, if I consider that there is a situation which is like the way you can see in this specific slide here, sysadmin is given a task to create a create a virtual machine. So, in order to create a virtual machine, what sysadmin does, sysadmin just puts in all specific requirements. For example, requirement of say 10 GB of space and say 12 core CPU. Sysadmin places this requirement, and this requirement flushes or goes to AWS through AWS Management Console. In AWS, we establish connectivity with AWS Cloud over AWS Management Console, which I'm going to show you even today, how that console looks like and how the interface looks like, how to create that EC2 instances. I'll try to show you. And all those who are aware of it, please watch this just for the brush up of your information or the knowledge which you do have. And all those who are pretty much new and who are not aware of it, it will be very much helpful for you, because until unless you know how to create a virtual machine, you will not be able to work on any of the DevOps framework or any of the DevOps tool. Because going ahead, I'm going to show you how to work on shell script, and in order to run shell script, either you have to have a Mac OS based laptop or a laptop which is having Linux based operating system. But commonly we use Windows operating system laptop. So in Windows operating system laptop also, by using VirtualBox, you can create a virtual machine of your own and can run it. But we don't prefer to do that. We prefer to use the EC2 instance which is present in AWS Cloud, or the VM which is present in Azure, and we try to do all the things. The same thing I'm going to do in our labs also. I'm going to show you installation of all the tools in AWS cloud or Azure cloud. In case if you prefer to use either of the cloud, please mention in the comment section. I'll just go ahead with that cloud vendor itself. But in by default, I'll try to install everything there in AWS cloud itself, AWS cloud platform itself, and we'll see that. So you must understand how to create EC2 instances in the first place. So now what I was referring to is this sysadmin is placing a request. The request is to create 10 GB of a virtual machine with 12 core CPU. Now the request is, this sysadmin pushes or puts that request to AWS by using AWS Management Console. So an interface which AWS offers, there the request has been placed. And in return, what AWS does, AWS in response creates one EC2 instance. In response, one EC2 instance is created. An EC2 instance gets created, and this sysadmin gets a respective IP address. Right, this sysadmin gets a respective IP address. That's it. Now, quite the same thing I said in our yesterday's session also. Though companies are paying for virtual machine, but company cannot go to AWS data center and start claiming for the virtual machine. Say that, hey, this is my virtual machine, give it to me. No, it's not going to happen. They are just going to get IP address. AWS will just provide IP address and will say that, okay, fine, I'm going to provide you IP address. Use your virtual machine by using your IP address only. But now think about the situation. If the request is to create one instance only, it's well and good. If the request is to create one instance only, it's well and good. Right? But what if the request is not to create one instance? If the request is to create one instance, well and good. But what if the request is to create 100 instances? 100 instances, then what happens? So in case if this sysadmin has to go manually, then quite the same sort of request of 10 GB 12 core CPU has to pass to AWS Management Console hundreds of times. First drawback is it's a kind of manual effort, which is quite a hectic task. Second thing is it might happen that when it's performed, the same task is performed monotonously for hundreds of times, there could be some human error. So two drawbacks which you can immediately see in case if this is done, in case if the request is performed many times, the two drawbacks which you can say is first is first is it causes human error human error. Certainly there will be human error because lots of things are done monotonously. And second thing which happens is this is one ineffective activity. This is one ineffective activity. And from day one, if you remember, I said you that DevOps is tend to bring effectiveness in your framework. Let it be your infrastructure creation framework, let it be your deployment framework, let it be the pipeline which you create by using DevOps. Everything, the main intention behind bringing DevOps is to help you to achieve automation, to help you to bring effectiveness in your infrastructure setup. So this is certainly not a good approach, right? This is certainly not a good approach. So what is the good approach in that case? And quite the same thing is applicable in case of Microsoft Azure also. In Azure also, this sysadmin is going to place a request of say 10 GB and 12 core CPU, and this goes to Azure by using Azure portal. In Azure, we call it as Azure portal. And here again, the request gets created, again, it gets created, and again, you are going to get the IP address. But the problem remains again same. In case if this sysadmin has to create hundreds of virtual machines in Azure, then what happens? Then again, it creates lots of problem for because of the monotonous activity. So monotonous is not an option. Why? Because the main advantage of DevOps, that is the pillar of DevOps. What is the main of advantage of DevOps increases efficiency. DevOps brings automation. DevOps allows us to have very less manual intervention. This is what we heard from our day one of the session itself. Now, how we can have automation, how we can increase efficiency with the use of APIs, certainly. APIs are going to play a vital role. APIs. Now, what this APIs will do? APIs instead of the sysadmin passing on the request one at a time, say in case if the request count is 100, 100 instances, 100 instances or virtual machines has to be created, then instead of passing hundreds of requests by sysadmin, this job will be done by APIs. So now what sysadmin has to do? Sysadmin has to just call this API, has to just send the request to API and mention, okay, fine, how many number of requests, how many number of instances of virtual machine you want to create. So these all tasks could be performed by using APIs instead of manually passing on all these requests through AWS Management Console. Now, how sysadmin will be able to connect to APIs by writing certain scripts. So, script will play a vital role. So, sysadmin is going to write some script, and that script will be calling this APIs, and these APIs will perform all necessary tasks to create the instances. Or I'm just mentioning the example as instances. There could be further other requests in AWS. We have other resources or other services like S3, EBS, some other resources could be maybe creating some CFT template or maybe creating some IAM routes. Plenty of requests could be there, and for every request there is a separate API which AWS developers has created. As the resource gets created, parallelly AWS developers work on creating respective APIs also. Now that APIs also gets created along with the request. So now in the request API, respective API for those requests has to be passed. For example, since we are talking about EC2 in our discussions, for EC2 there will be AWS EC2 API, and could be same for S3 also, could be same for EBS also. For S3 there will be S3 API, for EBS there will be EBS API. For each of the resources there will be respective APIs in the script which this admin is going to write, which any Mr. X is going to write. They have to call these APIs, right? APIs will be different for different resource type. Now, when they are calling, for sure they have to mention the count of the resources which they have to mention. In case if the count is to create one, then in the script they are going to mention one count for the respective resource for which the API has been called. In case if it's 100, then simply mentioning the 100 or 100 count within this. So what is the advantage? What we are getting with these mentions? With these mentions, the biggest advantage is with which this script is going to help us with is with these sort of mention of counts, we are achieving automation. What we are doing, this script is helping us to achieve automation, right? Automation. So now, even though if we are saving, say, 1 minute, I'm just giving one example, certainly you will save more than 1 minute. So even though if you are able to save 1 minute, this 1 minute is considered as save of this 1 minute is also considered as automation. And second thing is there is no manual effort. Everything is run through script. There is no manual effort. And certainly with the reduction of manual effort, there will be lesser human error. So this is the advantage which you're getting. And again, this script will also be cloud agnostic. APIs will be specific to a specific cloud. Say AWS S3 API or AWS EC2 API will be specific to AWS, but quite the similar sort of API for each of the resources will be created in Azure also, in Google Cloud also, in GCP also. Now, what we have to do whenever we talk about reaching out to respective cloud vendor with API request, we have to ensure that we have three different things. Request should be valid. That basically means that you have to place the request which is actually needed by API. API also looks for certain specific parameters based on which it's going to create resources for us. We cannot just pass anything. We have to mention, we have to, in case if we have to create a EC2 instance within the API, we have to give the value for memory. We have to give the value for memory, and we have to give the uh, value for processor. So memory as in 10 GB or whatever value you want to pass, processor as in the core, CPU core. CPU core. You have to pass these values to API, then and only then it's going to create. And similarly, it's different for other resources. So you should have a valid request in place in order to work with the APIs, in order to create resources using APIs. Other than this, Your request, you should be one authenticated user. You should have a valid login to AWS Management Console. Your ID should be valid. You should have a valid email address, valid password in order to log in into Management Console of AWS. Then and only then, quite the same credential you have to pass to your APIs also. There are a different situation of service account which allows us to pass non-human user credentials also, but you have to pass a valid username or user ID which should have proper permissions to create resources, and that is under authorized section. It might happen that your ID or your email ID do have access to AWS Management Console, but perhaps you don't have permissions to create EC2 instances. You don't have permissions to create S3 bucket. So even though you are able to, it's authenticated, it is not authorized. So all these three values should match. A valid request should be there. It should be properly authenticated. It should be properly authorized. Then and only then API is going to work. So what we have learned till now, you have learned that there is a lots of transition, lots of leaps, lots of evolution from how it was 10 years back to the way it is now. 10 years back it was all physical server. Any company used to have their own data centers, and in their data centers they used to have their own servers to start working on it. But things changed a lot. Nowadays everyone is moving to AWS cloud. In AWS cloud also, or in Azure cloud, to it's everyone is moving to Google cloud. But whatever cloud we talk about, we have to get rid of manual effort, because that's what DevOps teaches us. DevOps teaches us to become more and more efficient. And how we can become more and more efficient? We can become more and more efficient with the usage of APIs. We can call APIs within a script, but for API and script to work parallelly, we have to have valid request. We have to have authenticated the user ID, and our user ID should have proper authorization. This is what we have seen till now. Now let's get more in depth of how this script is going to work. Now, whenever we call script, whenever we write script, that script eventually has to work, has to get executed. Now, how you are going to execute the script? You can execute your script by either by using AWS CLI, the command line interface of AWS, where you can go and you can just write your script. Say for example, if you have to create one EC2 instance, then it could be dot slash ec2 dot sh, some sort of script, or dot slash ec2 slash dot py, some sort of either Python script or shell script you are going to write, and it is going to do the job. Or you can just give the execution of command from AWS command line interface, and it is going to do the job. What it does, it's going to hit the API. Now, API do have the valid request, do have the authenticated mechanism, do have the authorized mechanism to create the request. That request is considered as a valid request by AWS, and in return they create one EC2 instance and pass the API. Sorry, pass the IP address. Another way is by using AWS API. So now, say in case if you have good scope or good knowledge of REST API, or you have good knowledge of some programming language, for example, Python. In Python, we do have the module which is with the name Boto3. This Boto3 module is used to call all AWS APIs to create any resources. So by using AWS APIs, by using REST APIs, also quite the same thing could be performed. Another method is by using, and that is quite native to AWS Cloud. Another method which is very much native to AWS Cloud is, which I think I forgot to mention here, which is Cloud Formation Template. Another method which is very much native to AWS Cloud is Cloud Formation Template. So quite the same thing you can do by using AWS CFT, which is also known as Cloud Formation, Cloud Formation Template, Cloud Formation Template. So this is another very, very important method, very important service which AWS offers. And within this service, you can create one script which is very much native to AWS. Now, you see one thing, this AWS CLI, or if I talk about AWS API, or if I talk about CFT, these all are native to AWS. These all are not cloud agnostic. But if I talk about Terraform, then Terraform is cloud agnostic. Terraform is capable of creating your resources across any of the cloud vendor which you can think about. But Terraform is a very deep topic. I'll be talking about Terraform in good detail in our upcoming sessions, or I do have a full-fledged session of Terraform which I planned for, which is Terraform complete course, which I'll be conducting pretty much sooner, wherein I'll talk about how Terraform is capable of creating resources across multiple platforms. And also one more thing is there, which is AWS CDK, which is very, very much important thing. I'll talk about AWS CDK in few minutes. But you have to be very smart in choosing which all process you are going to use. Either you are going to use AWS CLI, or you are going to use AWS API, or you are going to use Terraform, or you are going to use AWS CDK, or you are going to use manual procedure to create all the resources. You have to choose things very, very smartly for yourself. Now, I'll give you one very small scenario. Consider that in an interview, it's been asked to you which tool you will prefer to create resources for your cloud infrastructure. Then your answers should be very smart. You cannot simply say that, okay, fine, I'm very good in Terraform, so I'll be using Terraform across creation of the resource for creation of the resources in my organization. No, this will not be the absolute correct answer. Absolute correct answer should be quite logical and quite be should be quite intellectual. Let's put the answer in this way and let's see how it sounds like. Now, instead of straightforward saying that, okay, fine, I'll be using Terraform to create resources, what if I say that, okay, I'll first analyze if my organization is going to stay with AWS cloud only for pretty much longer period of time, say for next 10 years, if my organization is going to remain with AWS cloud only for next 10 years, I won't choose Terraform as an option. Rather, I will choose an option which is quite native to AWS cloud, because certainly AWS will give more preferences to AWS native service, AWS native automation script, rather than sharing their processes, rather than sharing their APIs with any third party vendor or any open source vendor. AWS will give more preferences to its own internal services. So AWS will give certainly more preferences to AWS CDK or AWS CFT or AWS CLIs, rather than giving more preferences to Terraform. So if your organization is going to stay with AWS only for next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, then choosing the AWS CFT or AWS CDK will be a better option. So your answer should be quite logical, saying that, okay, fine, first I'll analyze whether my organization is going to stay with AWS only for next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And in case if they are, then I'll choose AWS native service for automation, for scripting. But if not, if my organization is going to use multiple services from multiple cloud vendors, then I'll prefer using Terraform as a automation tool to create services, to create various resources. Now, creating it's not uncommon thing for any organization to go with multiple vendors. Organization go with multiple vendors. Organization work along with AWS, with Azure, with GCP, and they prefer to choose different services. For example, in GCP, Kubernetes is considered as a very good services in GCP. AI, ML is GCP is considered as a leading cloud provider in providing services on AI, ML. If I compare with AWS and Azure, so people prefer to use AI and ML services from GCP. From AWS, they prefer to use a number of other services like APIs, or they create the services like storage from AWS. From Azure, they again, okay, storage is even better in Azure. We do have the concept of DevOps framework or DevOps framework, which Azure offers with the name of ADO, Azure DevOps. Azure offers, which is pretty much common, pretty much good with Azure. So a different cloud vendor do have its own proprietary, its own foundational service, which they sell, which is the selling point for that specific cloud vendor. So yes, companies goes along with multiple cloud vendors, and to this kind of framework where they go with multiple cloud vendor, they call as hybrid cloud model. And companies go with hybrid cloud model. And if company goes with hybrid cloud model, then the good tool to choose is Terraform rather than any specific cloud native service. You have to choose Terraform. Like Azure also do have cloud native service like ARM, Azure Resource Manager, which is very much native to Azure itself, right? So hybrid cloud is emerging a lot nowadays. And with the emerging of hybrid cloud, Terraform is getting an edge. Okay, so this is about choosing different services. This is about choosing different sort of scripting method. Now let's see things in practicals. But before that, I'll give a quick recap of what we have seen till now. What we have seen till now, we have understood how to create. The first thing which we understood is why we create a virtual machine. Next thing we understood is how to create a virtual machine, how VMs created in AWS, the entire basically workflow. And when I say workflow, it's basically the which is written, script which is written, and in order to write script, we call APIs. That APIs could be of multiple types. That APIs could be CLI. That API could be your REST API, respective cloud vendors CDK, and there could be Terraform also, which can leave its footprint. Terraform also. Another thing which we have also spoke about is another thing which we also discussed about is when to use which tool, right? This also we spoke about when to use which tool, when to use which automation framework, rather, when to use which automation framework. This also we spoke about, right? This also we spoke about, and how to answer it in interview. Say in case if it's been asked which one you will use, then how to answer that. That also we have learned. Now let's try to see things in practicals. What I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how to create a virtual machine in AWS Management Console, right? But going forward, I'll also be showing you how to create instances by using script, by using APIs and all. But for now, let's understand how to create it using. Okay, going forward, I'll be showing you by how to create it by using a script also. We'll be learning how to write script also. But for now, let's see how it's been created there in Management Console. So in your Management Console, you will have AWS login. Once you log in into AWS, once you do have your account created in AWS, then your Management Console will look something like this. And creating an account is not a rocket science. In order to create a account, you can just go to google.com, and here you will have to check for AWS. You have to check for AWS management or AWS console login. And in AWS console login, you just choose for AWS management console, and here you click on or create an AWS account. You click on create an AWS account, and as you click on create an AWS account, it is going to ask you to give your AWS account and account name and all. So just it's like you are creating one account in any of the social website. It's a straightforward inputs which you have to pass on, and as you pass on those straightforward inputs, at the end, AWS will, in case if you're creating from India, then AWS will ask for 2 rupees, 2 rupees INR as your at certain deductions it will make just to validate your ID which is present in your debit card, and post that your account will be created. Say in case if you're creating from United States, then the cost is, I believe it's $1, and it is again getting verified. It's just used to verify your identity. So after you do that, your account gets created. And as your account gets created, your management console looks something like this. As of now, I do have lots of recently visited things, but since it will be for the first time for you, it won't be any recently visited things. So it's quite a straightforward process to create an account also. So anyone who did not create an account, please go through those processes like the way explained and create an account for yourself. Again, it's a straightforward process, and do not hesitate. It's just 2 rupees INR if you're creating from India, and $1 from $1, $1 from United States whenever you are creating it. It's just to validate your identity. Now, when you create this, now AWS offers a bunch of services. So it's having more than 100 services at this point of time. Now, the service which we are talking about is EC2. So you have to search for that service. You have to just type EC2. And as you type EC2, the option which opens in front of you is EC2. Click on that EC2. So as you click on that EC2, this EC2 dashboard opens in front of you. This EC2 dashboard opens in front of you. Now, you click on EC2 instances. You click on EC2 instances, and now I don't have any instance created at this point of time. Now, you do have the preference to create which region you want to create. I live in India, so I've chosen the region as Asia Pacific Mumbai. Say in case if you live anywhere else, you can choose the region which is closer to your place. It's not as in I live in India, I cannot create in North Virginia. No, I can create in North Virginia, Ohio also, but I give preference to create in AP South 1 India region. You can create, anyone who lives in United States can also create in Asia Pacific region also. But yeah, being closer to your places, North Virginia, US East one will be better option to choose from. So I've chosen Asia Pacific Mumbai region where I'm going to create this EC2 instance. Now creation of EC2 instance is very much easy. You click on this launch instances. As you click on this launch instances, it is going to ask you all the straightforward inputs. It is the first thing which it asks is, okay, fine, provide the name of the instance which you want to create. So let's give a name. So I want to give a name as test, right? I just give a name as test, which I want to use to create the resource. Next thing is the image type, pretty much important. Which operating system you want to choose? I want to choose a Linux based operating system, or I want to choose a Windows based operating system, or any different distribution of Linux I can choose. I want to choose Ubuntu based operating system. AWS proprietary, AWS its own Linux operating system is also there, to which AWS sells with the name Amazon Linux. SUSE Linux is another variations, another distribution. I'm going to choose any one at this point. Gradually, as the session proceeds, I'll explain you with other scenarios also, with other distribution also. But at this point, let's choose Ubuntu as an option. So I've chosen Ubuntu. And after that, here it's very much important which specific type of image you're choosing. Now you see here, something is free tier eligible. Now something which is free tier eligible, AWS is not going to cost you, though there is a limit. I think for a month in 30 days, you can keep it up for 720 hours only. If you are keeping your EC2 instance, which is free tier eligible for time period beyond 720 hours, then AWS will start charging you. Always remember this, because I have seen many times people just create instance and they forget to delete it. Do not keep it open for more than 720 hours, 720 hours, because even free tier eligible start incurring, AWS start incurring charge even for the instances which is free tier eligible. But by default, for first 12 months, as you create an account from that period for first 12 months for all the free tier eligible EC2 instances AMI, they are not going to charge anything. But what you are getting with free tier eligible, you are getting a resource of lesser capacity. For this, you will be getting a lesser capacity, but in case if I'm choosing any other one, then that will be of more expensive type, then that will be a more expensive type. So I'm going to keep it as free tier eligible only. And you see the instance type also. The instance type again decides, okay, fine, which how many CPU core I'm getting, what is the memory I'm getting, based on which it starts charging me. For the free tier eligible, the instance type is which is provided to me is 1 GB memory and only one CPU core. But in case if I choose other options, maybe I choose the option as say 32x large, in that I'm getting 256 GB memory and 128 V core CPU. But that will be very much expensive. You see the pricing is 11.328 USD per hour for different types of EC2 instance, and within the type also there are different pricing models based on which the prices varies. I'm not going to get into much depth onto that at this point of time, but let's try to understand how to create an instance rather than going much depth into the pricing model of EC2 instances. Now, once I've chosen the instance type, and remember, to begin with you have to choose the instance type as free tier eligible only, because that will be absolutely free of cost for you. Another thing which you have to choose is key pair login. This is pretty much important. Now, normally what happens is whenever you try to log in into any server, it asks for your username, it asks for password. AWS chooses more secure method to log in. Instead of you putting in password, what AWS says is, I will give you a key and you just select that key and put your username and I'll allow you to log in. So instead of putting any password, you have to pass a key which AWS will generate for you. So in order to generate a key, what you have to do, you have to click on create a new key pair. So you choose the encryption method as you first, as you click on this, give a name to the key pair. So I'm giving test key pair. I'm giving the name as test key pair, test key pair. And after that, I'm going to choose the encryption method as RSA and keeping the private key type format as .pem, which I will be gradually using with some of the open SSH tool like MobaXterm. So I'll be showing you how to connect to this instance in our next session by using MobaXterm as open SSH tool. And when you choose these all options, just click on create key pair. Let's not go much in depth. Now you see, as you click on create, it has downloaded a key pair for you. It is like in .pem format. It is the encrypted key which you are going to use to log in, which we are going to see in our upcoming sessions also. Let the other values remain default for the time being, and click on launch instance. As I click on launch instance, within few seconds, a virtual machine gets created for you. You see what's happening? You click on this instance back again, and you see within few seconds, if I have to create a virtual machine by using a hypervisor like either VMware or by using either VirtualBox, it's perhaps going to take minutes or maybe at least an hour for the entire virtual machine. I have to bring it up. But with AWS Management Console, within few seconds, I am able to bring things back up. Right? This is the advantage of using AWS Management Console. Now, quite the same thing you can do with Azure also. In Azure, we call it as portal.azure.com. In Azure, we do have portal.azure.com. And as you go into portal.azure.com and you have to create an ID of your own. For example, I'm using my ID to log in, and let's see if it allows me to log in with this ID or not. Let's see if it's taking me to the right place. I think it has allowed me to log in. Yeah, I think it has allowed me to log in. So now you see it it took me to Azure portal because I already do have my account created with Azure portal. I am into Azure portal, and quite the same procedure for Azure portal also. There will be a template. You have to fill all the fills in that template, and at the end, just to validate your identity, AWS Azure will also charge you certain amount. But with that amount entry, your account and the subscription will be enabled. Now, unlike AWS, Azure offers only 3 month of period to occupy certain amount of time. I think Azure gives certain amount of dollars for you to occupy within 3 months of time, rather than unlike as AWS. AWS offers 12 months period for any of the EC2 instance, which is free tier eligible. You can use, considered there is a catch within it that you should not keep the instance which is free tier eligible for more than 720 hours in a month. But Azure does not do that. Azure offers only, it gives only certain amount of dollars just for 3 months only. So be careful when you are using Azure. So now in Azure, we call it as a virtual machine. Instead of like we call EC2 in AWS, in Azure, we call it as a virtual machine. And when we click on this virtual machine, again, a template opens for us. It gives an option to create. Once you click on create, a template opens. You have to fill the values in the template, and your values, your resources gets created. So this is the way you create an is resources in your in your AWS management console and in the Azure portal. So this is what I wanted to cover in this session: how to create a resources, how to create an EC2 instance. Now, in my next session, I'm going to show you how to connect to these EC2 instances and to work on this. Which with gradual with my upcoming sessions, I'm also going to show you how to write certain scripts to create these all resources, or how to work on these instances or virtual machine which we create, to write certain scripts, maybe shell script or maybe Python script, in my upcoming session. So fine. So thank you everyone for watching this video. All in case if you think that this video is providing you certain information and is capable of giving certain information to someone who is who is looking for knowledge in DevOps or knowledge in scripting, or who is interested in learning about DevOps framework, please share this video to others, and ensure that you are just trying to grasp certain information from these all videos. Okay. And also, don't forget to like the video. In case if you are liking it, provide your feedback, good, bad, whatever it is, in the comment section. Right. And in case if you did not subscribe my video, subscribe it so that we both can grow together. Thank you, everyone.